Hello, Amanda here. I am a materials engineer and a teacher, and I teach middle school students all about fusion. So, welcome to our new series, and I hope you enjoy it here. In this video, I'm just going to talk all about the basics. So, I'm going to show the layout and also talk about a lot of the frustrations that my students experience that keep them from continuing on and going further with design. So I just want to talk a little bit about the basics in Fusion today. If you notice, there's a black box on the left-hand side of the screen. That doesn't actually exist in Fusion. For some reason, the recording software I use chooses to turn this area into a black area. I'm not sure why that is. I'm going to try to avoid drawing in this area as much as possible. So initially, when you open up Fusion, it can seem really overwhelming. Don't scare yourself with all the things that are involved. Fusion will allow you to take yourself from a very beginner to an extreme advanced designer. However far you want to go into Fusion, Fusion is just amazing. Like I can't say enough great things about it. The fact that it's free really just excites me because it just makes the program accessible to so many people that otherwise wouldn't be able to have that. I want to talk a little bit about the frustrations that students have. So whether or not it's with college or middle school, I've taught both of these levels. I always hear very common frustrations. And one of the biggest frustrating parts of it is the order in which to click things. So whether you right click or left click, or whether you're in a sketch or out of a sketch or editing a sketch, and those things sound very simple, but in the beginning, they're a little bit difficult to start to learn naturally. If you have those frustrations in the beginning, I want you to realize, and I'm going to stress this in probably all of my videos, that frustration is absolutely normal. If you can work through Fusion for about the first 3 to 4 months, I've noticed that my students go from, I don't want to say it, but they hate Fusion, and then all of a sudden they really enjoy it. And it's because that natural ability starts to take over and you just get used to working with the program. So I would encourage you just to get past that initial bump. You can do it. I have total faith in you. Students from all my students are just normal. They're normal people. I don't teach at an advanced school or anything like that. But every single one of my students has shown the capability to be able to be incredible, fun designers. And I would encourage you to stick that through. Okay, so with that being said, I want to get right into some of the basic features that you should be familiar with before starting lesson 2. So the first thing you should be familiar with is what's called the view cube, and that is located in this upper right-hand corner. I need to find a model or something to better show this, but you have to think about whenever you're creating drawings in Fusion, you can visualize Fusion as sort of a glass box that you are creating your parts in. And this box, or this view cube in the upper right hand corner, is a representative of that glass box that you're essentially drawing in. And this box will allow you to move your part. So I can left click on this corner here, left click and hold, and then I physically move my mouse around, and that allows me to move this cube. You can't see anything in this area yet because there's nothing drawn there. So this big white space in the center is known as the graphics area. And so this is where you draw all your stuff. It's where the magic happens. It's where, amazing things are created. This is a graphics area. So I'm going to show you a few of the simple things that you can learn and kind of play with, at least during your first initial lesson. Okay, so I'm going to go to Sketch. So Sketch, the way that Fusion is designed is you create 3-dimensional objects from 2-dimensional drawings. And so if you want a 3-dimensional object, you typically want to start with a drawing. There's some options of creating some simple shapes directly as a three-dimensional object, but you can't really get into anything extremely detailed beyond very simple shapes. So I'm just going to demonstrate some of the things that I can do in Fusion. So I'm going to just draw a simple sketch so that you can see how the view cube moves that, and then we're going to use some other functions in Fusion to just be able to examine and look at our part. Okay, and I'm just going to show you the two most common features as well that are used to create three-dimensional objects. So I'm going to left click on create up here, and then this drop down box gives me all of really some of the most common things that are used in Fusion. I'm going to go ahead and left click on create sketch. So the first thing that Fusion wants us to do is select a plane in which to sketch on. Understanding this process is so vital. So sometimes I talk to myself as I'm going through Fusion, and I tell myself, okay, I want to sketch, and now I need to say just where I want to sketch. So I'm going to just sketch on this plane at the bottom here. I'm going to go ahead and left click on it. Notice how everything turns to this, this plane that I've selected. And then if I look over at my view cube, notice how I'm drawing from the top view. And so I can tell it's the top view by looking at my view cube. So the first thing I want to do is left click on my circle command just to demonstrate a simple shape. So if I left click on my circle command, I am now drawing a center circle. So I'm going to left click on that. I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to refer to this a lot. So this indicates the very center of this glass box in which we're drawing in. All right, I'm going to left click and let go of my mouse button. And then I'm going to I'm going to drag out my mouse a little bit, and then I'm going to left click, and that's going to create my circle here. One thing I need to mention is, I'm going to talk about this in a later video, but I use a corded mouse. I love a corded mouse. I've used cordless, I don't know if the plural is mouses in the past, and they've all just messed up after a while. They're not as sensitive as corded computer mouse. Now I can't say the right word. They're not as sensitive as a corded computer mouse. And so I really like, another thing I like in using a computer mouse is distinct keys. So some computer mouses, I'm just going to say mouses from now on. Some computer mouses, this is one single key, and I've noticed that my students have a really hard time with that because they don't click on the right or click on the left properly enough to be able to create the things in Fusion. Another really helpful thing is actually the old school kind of rolly ball here. There's an option in Fusion to actually select or press down on the ball and then physically move your mouse, and it allows you to look at your object in a new way. So whenever I say left click and right click, I'm referring to these keys on the mouse. So as I'm going through these tutorials, just know that that's what I'm referring to. Okay, so I have my circle here. And now I'm going to go ahead and use this view cube again. I'm going to press this home button here. This places my object in what is known as isometric view. I'm going to probably cover isometric view in a later video, but just know that that's what it turns your part into, or and it has to deal with specific angles at which it angles this at. So now if I left click on this piece here and drag up, notice how my circle is starting to rotate. Okay, so now I'm going to take my object to a different level. So I'm going to go ahead and left click on Finish Sketch. I'm going to get into what's called the Extrude command. So Sketch and Extrude, they're going to be the number 1 and number 2 things that you ever use in Fusion. So I'm just introducing them now so that you kind of get a really good feel for where they're at. So I always, you cannot extrude when you're actively in a sketch. So you always want to exit your sketch before you get into the extrude command. So I'm going to go ahead and left click on extrude. Notice how the blue box around this symbol right here indicates that it's active. There's two different ways that you can extrude. I'm going to left click and you can physically drag this arrow up. Or there's also a pop-up box that shows up here, and notice that the distance here, you can just input a distance. So I'm going to put 2 inches. My units are in inches. And if I zoom out, I can see where or what it looks like. Okay, so again, if I go to my view cube, left click, I can now start rotating this piece around. If you've made it this far in the tutorial, congratulations. This is the first 3-dimensional object you've ever made. So it's a huge step. If you were to do this by hand, it would take you quite a while to make as beautiful as Fusion can. So let's talk about some of the tools used to actually view your part. So if you look at the bottom left here, this is called the orbit command. This is your view toolbar on the very bottom here. If I left click and hold down my left mouse button and then physically move my mouse, I can use this command to view different parts of your object. And it's really helpful because it really fine-tunes that rotation. The next one I use all the time is known as the pan command. It's this tiny little hand on the bottom. If I left click that, this enables me to do translational motion, so just to move this side to side or up and down. Again, in order to use that, I left click and hold in the graphics area, and then I physically move my mouse around, and that allows me to pan. The last thing that I want to cover in this tutorial is actually I want to cover 2 more things. So the next thing I want to talk about, Fusion might have a different name, but I've used different CAD software, and they all have a very similar theme. So this area over here, which I'm randomly drawing with my pan command, this is known as the design tree. And there's a lot of information that shows up in this tree. I'm going to go ahead and left click on this first piece up here. And if I look under documents, that actually shows my units. And you can work in units of metric units or US customer units. If you left click on that, this pops up and gives you the option to change that. Also, all of the features, all of the bodies, all of your sketches show up here, and they show up in order, and it keeps a nice timeline. So these are all the, underneath the origin tab here, these show all the planes or all the objects. So this is the X, Y, and Z axes, so that shows the axes. This right here is the origin, so that's the very center origin or the very center of Fusion. And then these are your 3 planes that you have the option of choosing to sketch on. They're basic planes. There's other planes that you can choose, but these are the very basic ones that are most commonly used. The last thing I want to show is I want to go ahead and get back into my sketch. So that original sketch, that circle sketch, and this is a really difficult thing for students to do. A lot of times they pop in and out of sketches. They're unable to edit a sketch. And a lot of the times it's because they're not in the sketch that they're wanting to edit. And so, we get frustrated and we think that Fusion can read our minds, but it's just a computer automated system. We have to tell it what we want. And we have to be very clear on the things that we tell it that we want. So if I'm saying Fusion, I want to edit my sketch, I have to go down and find the sketch that I want to edit. So if you look here at the bottom left-hand corner, it gives us a beautiful timeline of the things that we're actively creating. Notice if I go to create and if I go to create sketch, this icon under create sketch is the same icon that shows in the bottom left-hand corner. And this just indicates that that is a sketch. I'm going to left click on that sketch. I'm going to right click on that sketch, and this tool, I'm going to right click and let go, and this toolbar pops up. Then I'm going to go up and edit the sketch. I'm going to left click on edit sketch. And you have to get those clicks just right in order to be able to actively edit your sketch. The last thing I want to show is how to turn off and on your grid. So if you notice, this background initially was white, and it doesn't have any lines indicating like how big things are. The grid is really useful in determining your scale, so how large objects are in your drawing, and that will in your design. And that is determined, how big your object is determined by your units. So initially we are in, I set this to units of inches. And so when I turn on my grid, I'm going to left click at this bottom, it's like the bottom icon. It's like second to the right on the bottom view toolbar. I'm going to left click on it, and it gives me this option of layout grid. So if I left click here, I can turn and toggle on and off my grid. Each one of these black lines here indicates an inch. So it's an inch from this line to here, and it's also an inch from this line to here. And so just be aware that, and when I look at my object here, I can actually count how wide this circle is. And so if it's probably starts from like the center of here, or I'm just going to estimate it. I'll start here. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then I know it's larger than 3 inches. But that just gives me an idea of how big this is. And it's always great to go back and compare. From my experiences, students have the tendency of not realizing the size in which they're creating it. I think most often people make things too big rather than too small. It's just been my experience. But as you design, you'll get used to working in these units. So the next thing I want to talk about is when you can and can't turn off your grid. So I'm going to go ahead and go back down here and then select the layout grid off. So I'm just turning it off right now. So I'm just going to pretend that I'm actively in my first sketch. So I'm going to go back into my sketch and try to edit it. If I go and try to turn on my grid now, it doesn't give me that option. And so just note that you have to be out of a sketch before you can turn off and on your grid. So again, I'm going to go to this bottom piece. I'm not actively in a sketch. Left click on that option and then left click on my grid layout, and it turns it on so that I can see that. So that's all I wanted to cover today. I don't want to overwhelm you with all of the options that Fusion has. We're going to get into all of the features, at least all the basic ones in this entire course. I want you to take each feature very slow, figure out your favorite features, and really try to hone in on those skills in those features. Don't get overwhelmed through this. A lot of the students tend to quit early on. It's not because the information is difficult. It's because Fusion is not a very natural thing, right? You don't come out into this world knowing how to navigate through a CAD software. It's not something that is naturally learned. And so it's kind of weird. I can describe Fusion as learning how to drive a car. Whenever you start driving a car, it seems really weird. Like you kind of wobble in and out, and it takes you a while to just realize that you just need to hold the steering wheel for the most part and drive and feel comfortable, not to focus on other negative things. And you just kind of just naturally go with the flow. And it takes some time to actually get there. The same is true with Fusion. So being able to right click or left click or figure out if you're in or out of a sketch or when to turn your grid on, all of those things will come with time. If you ever need to take a break while you are designing in Fusion, go take a 5-minute break, walk around, and then get back into it. You're never going to kick yourself for learning Fusion. You might, though, if you choose just to stop. And so I really want you to kind of struggle through and work at it. Know that that is normal. And I'm here to help you every step of the way. Feel free to reach out to me with any suggestions on content that you would like to see or different designs that you would like me to design. I'm going to cover the basics. before every lesson, I'm going to actually cover any terminology that is involved in that lesson. So in my next lesson about circles, for example, I cover both radius and diameter when I talk about circles. And before I even start to use circles, I talk about what radius and diameter are. And so note that, I'm not going to use any terminology, at least mathematical terminology, that you can't comprehend. And so just have faith that, you know, you can do that. And so, yeah, I'm excited about starting this. I love teaching. Even though I was trained as an engineer, teaching is what I've always been drawn to. And so I'm really excited to have the opportunity just to be here with you, to support you through that. And I'm looking forward to creating all these amazing designers in the world. And so thank you for being here. See you next time.